By now you're probably thinking, why wouldn't I want to get an iPod Touch? I mean, they're so awesome, they do so much more. But now, here is where the iPod Classic absolutely dominates. The battery life. Now, Apple says that the iPod Classic can have up to 36 hours of audio playback and the Touch can have 30, but don't listen to Apple. They're just trying to make it sound that good. When they say that, they mean you can have 36 hours of audio playback on the iPod Classic if you have the backlight all the way off all the time and your music is at the lowest possible volume in which you can't hear it. That's when you can get 36 hours. And for my Classic, I like to keep the backlight on. I have it at a low brightness, which conserves a lot of battery life. And depending on where I am, that depends on the loudness of my earbuds. So, often I like to have, the volume a bit of the way up, maybe this much or something. But still, even with the backlight on and the audio about halfway up, with the iPod Classic, you can still get a good, I'd say, 20 hours of audio playback, if that's just what you're doing. With the iPod Touch, I'd say you can get about, 10 or a little less than that. So the Classic battery dominates, definitely. And also for video playback, if you're watching videos on a much bigger screen, obviously the battery is going to drain way, way faster. And same thing with the battery life on the video playback. You say for iPod Classic you can have about 6 hours of video playback, and the Touch you can have 5, I think. But again, that is with the backlight off, the lowest possible volume, and all that stuff. And so, say I want to watch a video. I don't want to have the backlight off, because then, I don't want to have to squint and peer into the screen. I want to, shine out a little bit. And also I want to have the volume just a little bit up. So when you're doing that, with the iPod Classic at, a brightness of maybe about halfway, I'm keeping it off so it looks better on the camera. But brightness about halfway, same with audio, I've gotten a good 2.5 hours of video playback on the iPod Classic. As the iPod Touch, unfortunately, I've gotten about 1 hour on each of them on a full battery charge. Obviously, the Touch, it's much more fun and easier to look at with such a bigger screen, but the big screen comes with a cost of battery life. If you're going on the internet, going on iTunes, using the internet, that's a very fast battery drainer. And I found it to be, if you're playing a game such as Tap Tap Revenge or, Fluid or whatever, the battery life can be just over an hour on the iPod Touch. So, definitely, if you're going to get an iPod Touch, you'll have to charge it every day. So now let's go to the other dominant feature the iPod Classic has, storage. The iPod Classic has 160 gigabytes. That's the only one you can buy nowadays. And the iPod Touch comes in an 8 gigabyte, a 32 gigabyte, and a 64. The 160 gigabyte iPod Classic is $250. The 8 gigabyte iPod Touch is $200. The 32, which is this, is $300, and the 64 is $400. So definitely, if you have a lot of stuff, you may want to consider a Classic. Say you have about 40 gigabytes of stuff, you have some music and a few TV shows and movies, and you want an iPod Touch, but you want it to be able to hold all of your stuff. If you're going to go buy this $400 iPod Touch, you'll probably buy a case, possibly a warranty, maybe some extra earphones, and with tax, this is going to come close to $500. And iPods typically last from, maybe 2 to 4 years. So, really, most people in the world have to work for a living, it's kind of bad economy right now. Do you really want to spend $1,000 for something that's going to last just a few years? But on the other hand, if you just have a few gigabytes of stuff and you really don't need a 32 or 64, then go for an 8 gigabyte one for $200. As you can kind of see right here, I have a respectably large iTunes library with about 1,700 songs, and, I'm a big music fan, And also, I have a couple of movies, and I have a lot of TV shows, like The Amanda Show. It's the best show ever. And, it says I have 189 TV shows, and that is about 66 gigabytes of, TV shows, even though you're getting 3.5 days worth of entertainment with just the TV shows. Still, it's a lot of memory. And that's why I bought the iPod Classic. One more quick thing. The iPod Touch comes in this cool acrylic case. This is actually for the iPod Nano, but the iPod Touch comes in a case just like this, just a little bigger. And it's really awesome. You can see the iPod inside when you're buying it. The iPod Classic only comes in a box. I found that kind of weird. All the other iPods come in this thing. Just thought I'd mention that. So now you've seen both of these iPods, you now know the pros and cons of each of them, so you can go to Best Buy or the Apple Store or wherever and try them out for yourself and have fun.